सुंदरनाथाय तस्मै हालास्य वासिने चतुष्षष्टि विधालीला येनाकारी भुवस्थले श्रीमत् सुंदरनाथस्य देवीं शपरलोचनां कलये हृदये नित्यं कदम्ब वनवासिनीं पूतं स्वतः पूततरं ततोयद् गांगं पयः शंकर मौलिसंगात् तत्पातु मातः प्रणयापराध पादाहतैः पूततमं ततो नः. Nilakanta Dikshita has been describing the what is a good kavyam, and he showed us about how we can separate the timeline of poetry very similar to the Chatur Yugam, which is Krita Yuga, Dwapara Yugam, Treta Yugam, Dwapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga, where people have expressed beautiful poetry. And they have written beautiful poetry which has expressed the rasam, and the rasa is understood by Vyangya. That is equal to Krita Yugam, which is the best of the yugas. And then the next is Treta Yugam. Then you have Dwapara Yugam. In the Treta Yugam, it was where Gunibhuta Vyangyam was Pradhanam. And the third Yuga, where Artha Chitram or a prominence was given to Arthalankaras. And then the last wherein it is only the Shabdalankaras which are prominent today. And people want to immediately grab the attention of others by making shlokas which have alliterations or the repetition of letters. But that is the lowest form of poetry. Right? Next, he moves on to Dishtya Adhirudhaha Kavitadhirajyam Dhiraramante Nahijabdra Chitre. Why is it the lowest form of poetry? Because those who are all intelligent people, they have, when they have climbed the, ascended the throne of poetry, right? They do not want to dwell in this Shabda Chitram. When there are different types of Dhvani Kavyas which exist, there are some 5,000 varieties of Dhvani. He couldn't even talk about, include one type of Dhvani in his poetry, then it doesn't matter at all. So he does not revel in this Shabda Chitram. The great person who is intelligent and who wants to convey Anandam through his poetry, he is not enamored by this Shabda Chitram. It is like going to Swargam, and then there are a lot of Apsarastris. You don't go and search for someone who has been blinded in one eye when there are perfect people around, right? Perfect, beautiful women around. So Swargepi Gatva Apsarasam Nivase Kanaiva Kim Kapi Gaveshaniya. Do you have to search for someone who is differently abled instead of someone who is very perfect? Right? We stopped with that 39th shloka. Move on to the next one. Now, for Kavya Rachanam, it's not enough if you just know mere words or Shabda Kosham. This trend he has used in many shlokas before, and he just expresses it in a different way in the shloka. Matva padak granthanameva kavyam mandaha swayam tavati cheshtamanaha majjanti bala iva panipada praspandamatram plavanam vidantaha. A very apt example he gives. So some child who thinks that swimming is all about moving your hands and legs. A child stands on the banks of a river. He sees a lot of people swimming and he thinks that that is what is swimming, and he can also do it. It is so easy because it's Kalikalam. A lot of kids like to think that they know everything. That I know attitude is very prevalent today among children. Right? So these kids also Balaha Panipada Praspandana Matram Plavanam Vidantaha. Plavanam is swimming. So swimming, they think that it is only Hastapada Chalanameva Atra Taranam Iti Manyante Natu Naipunyena Taranam. Knowing all the different strokes, there are 4 types of strokes, how to stay afloat. You go through swimming lessons, you will know it involves a lot of techniques there. So without knowing any of those techniques, he thinks that he can just shake his hands and then swim. In fact, that is the opposite. You let yourself be, the body is naturally buoyant and it will float out. But these kids, they get very, let's say, excited, and they want to shake their hands just as how the other expert swimmers do it. So, Pani Pada Praspanda Matram Plavanam Vidantaha, those kids who vidantaha ye jananti kim panipadaspandamatram plavanam iti. They think that plavanam or swimming is only pani and pada praspandam. Pani cha padau cha panipadam. Tasya spandaha. Spandaha is just throbbing, movement, any sort of movement. Natu naipunyena tatra chalanam. So panipada praspanda matram tavadeva taranam iti yadi manyante tarhi balaha majjanti. They just sink underneath. The prakritam here is kavya grathanam khalu. So padagrathanameva kavyam matva, thinking that it is only the mere stringing of words. Padagranthanam natu tatra vishesha vinyasaha. They are not thinking of how to put it in a beautiful kramam, how to frame it in such a manner that people derive joy from this. Tadrisham na chintayanti. Parantu padagranthanameva kavyamiti matva, thinking that it is just mere putting together of a lot of words. Mandaha, fools. Swayam tavati cheshtamanaha. Tavati ityukte tavanmatre. Padagranthana-matre eva cheshtamanaha yatamanaha. So they make an effort, or they get into that, or they sink to writing bad poetry because they only do that. Tavati cheshtamanaha. Tavat is tavat parimanam. Right? So here, what is that parimanam that is qualified here? It is the padagrathanam. So padagranthanameva tavat kavyam iti matva. They only endeavor to put in those words. That's all. They do not go beyond the word level. That is understood here. Right? It is only the words that they look at. They do not go beyond that. They do not go into arthalankara, let alone go into dhvani. So tatra padagranthanameva kurvanti. Right? And swayam tavati eva. Swayam here indicates they don't take the advice of anybody else. See, we have many different kavyas which are like reference material for us. We could read those and then think about how to write a kavyam. So once, the moment you read a lot of kavyas, you understand that mere stringing of words is not going to sound like a kavyam or sound like a padyam or even be beautiful, let alone be beautiful. Right? So, Swayam, and then they don't take the advice of anybody else also. There are different alankarikas who have written, right? Starting from Bharata, Dandin, Udbhata. There are so many alankarikas who have also given you rules and regulations for writing a poetry. What is a good poetry? What is a bad poetry? What is an ornament in a poetry? What are the doshas in a poetry? Not considering any of those. Those are the advices that you take, right? Without even doing that. Oh, he has written a poem. I will also write a poem. What does it involve? I know Kosham. I have Vyakaranam in hand. I can easily write. And Swayam. Tatra anya upadesham vina atmana tavati cheshtamanaha majjanti atra jale magnaha yata balaha jale magnaha bhavanti tatha atra padagumphane eva nimajjanti natu tatra tataha bahihi agatya dhvani vishaye pravartante. Right? So they just completely sink into writing only poetry which concentrates on words, and they don't come out of it and look at other possibilities in a poetry. Okay, so matva padagranthanameva kavyam mandaha swayam tavati cheshtamanaha majjanti bala iva panipada praspandamatram plavanam vidantaha. Here it is upamalankara. Very clearly it's an upamalankara. The next shloka, from this shloka onwards, the 41st shloka. So with the 40th shloka, we have sort of covered half of the first sarga. Now, he has given you a background on how a kavyam should be. Mere words are not enough for a kavyam. You need something more than that. You have to be able to express your vivakshitartha. Just mere expressing your vivakshitartham is that which is desired. Vaktum ichcha. Vaktum ishtaha arthaha. It is not mere expression, but still you need to put it in such a beautiful manner that rasam comes out of it, and that rasa can be enjoyed by the people who hear it or who listen, who see it in the form of a drama. Right? Now he has laid the foundation for what differentiates normal speech from the poetry from normal speech. Right? Now, from this shloka onwards, he is now going to talk about bad poets. Kalat bahoho kanyapi dushpadani labdhani mandaha paritaha vikirya chidrani loshtaihi atha pamsubhischa sampurayan vismayate vilajjaha. Kalat bahoho kalat dirghat samayat. Right? If you have any questions, please, I will keep it to the end. So you can raise your hand at that point of time. Make a note of any doubts that you have, and then I'll address it at the end. I'll give you 10 to 15 minutes at the end. Right. So bahoho kalat labdhani kani api dushpadani paritaha vikirya. A poet, he, let's say it's not a poet, it's still mandaha. Mandaha kaschana dushkavihi ityapi vaktam shakyate. So mandaha kaschana, a dull head, after a long time, he keeps on collecting words. That is, he has read many things, but he doesn't have that pratibha. Pratibha asti chedapi tatra bhagyasya avashyakata vartate. You need a fortune also. Adrishta vashyat eva tatra kavyam kartum. He's given the background for us for everything. Now he's just going to put it together, consolidate, and say how normal people or manda buddhayaha, they are unable to create poetry here. Bahoho kalat, they are trying to collect words. Okay, so chandobaddam kavyam lekhitum they ichanti. A mandaha, a dull-head person wants to write a poetry. Now what he does is he keeps on searching for words and he collects some words. He thinks they are good words probably, but then labdhani dushpadani, they are all such bad words, that is, they express either bad meaning or they are not beautiful enough to be put in a poetry. It should be appropriate. There are so many auchitya vishayas that need to be taken into consideration when you are writing a poetry. So kanichana dushpadani sanchitya labdhani kanichana dushpadani. What does he do? Tatra tatra sanchati saha paritaha vikirya. He just spreads it around to form a poetry. So in the name of forming a poetry, he collects certain words. Prayaha tatra chando vyakarana dosha yuktani bhavanti tani padani tani sarvani prapnoti eshaha tadanantaram tatra sanchati. So he just sprinkles it everywhere in his work and thinks that he has done a great job. Vismayate. He also looks at his work and Ashcharyam anubhavati. Vilajjaha. Vigataha lajjaha. Vigata lajja yasmate. So vilajjaha sanne, he's shamelessly, he looks at his own work and says, oh, I have done a great job. He doesn't even realize that his poetry is bad. Okay. So bahoho kalat kanyapi dushpadani labdhani paritaha vikirya vilajjaha san vismayate. He just feels very happy about it, or he feels surprised that he wonders at himself, his own work. How can I, this is like, we say in Tamil, tantalela akshada potukaradu. That's what he does. Now, this is compared to a person who is trying to repair a house or build a house, right? He wants to build a house, but instead of using bricks, he just uses whatever small clods of mud that he gets or dust that he gets. He just collects it together and pastes it and thinks that it is a wall. It is a beautiful house that he has created. And he himself wonders at the house that he has built. Loshtaihi pamsubihi chidrani sampurayan. Now, the way you understand this is, so kanichana, he takes certain words, he throws it everywhere. Now, when he throws it, there are some lacunae or holes in that poetry, right? Now, he tries to fill them in with mud or pamsu. Loshtam is mud, mritpindam. Tadana pamsu ityukte dhuli. dust. There are chidrani, there are holes everywhere. Chidrani sampurayan, samyak purayati, samyak bharitam karoti. Tatra chando vichittihi jayate. Tasmat, there are some nyuna padam. He needs some aksharam, extra aksharam to fill up that chandas. So aksharana nyunatve sati tatra padapuranaya. There are words that you can find which are meaningless. So it is equal to mritpindam and pamsu, which is cha, vai, tu, he, etc. These are all pamsu. These are all like dust, which is very simple. And then words which are meaningless or anupayogi. Words that are useless and not at all giving any value to this. See, you can have visheshanas, like I think in one of the shlokas we saw parikara alankara. I'm not sure if we saw it in this kavyam or not as yet. There is an alankara called parikara alankaram, where if you put in visheshanas for a visheshya, every visheshana has to be with a purpose. Sabhiprayam. So, sabhipraye visheshane sati tatra parikara alankaraha ityuchyate. If there are visheshanas, adjectives that the person has used, which are meaningless or useless, there is no purpose to it, simply he has used those words, then there is no point in it. It is a bad poetry. Parantu ayan kavihi vismayate vilajjas sanne. He is totally tektalajjaha. He thinks that he doesn't even realize that it is it is destroying the value of the poetry. He doesn't realize it and he looks at it with wonder. Okay, so bahoho kalat labdhani kanyapi dushpadani sarvataha kavye vikirya paritaha vikirya mandaha kaschana atha tadanantaram किम करोति तत्र छिद्राणि पश्यति बिलानि दूषणानि सन्ति इति पश्यति सः परन्तु तानि दूषणानि एषः पूरयति कथं पूरयति इति चेत् लोष्टैः पांसुभिः च लोष्टम् इत्युक्ते मृत्पिण्डम् so with clods of mud he just fills it. Mud is nothing, right? It is not going to, it is like when there are cracks you just superficially cover it. You don't realize the internal source of the problem and address the source of the problem. You only do a temporary patch. This is like, in a big program, you have certain internal source problems, but instead of addressing those problems, you just do a temporary patch continuously, right? You download patches and you do it in your software industry. It's very similar to that, but that is not going to address the basic foundation problem. If that foundation itself is not correct, then no amount of filling in the holes is going to make it stronger or make it look beautiful. So chidrani loshtaihi pamsubihi cha. Pamsu is smaller than loshtam. Loshtam is clods of mud, which is, you can take it as anupayogibihi padaihi saha sampurayati. Kintu pamsubihi ityukte tatra pamsu sadrishaihi cha vai tuhi ityadi padapurana padaihi saha sampurayati. Okay. Sampurayan na kevalam sampurayati tadanantaram cha. See, you should realize that the value of your work also. But he is without any lajja, he looks at it and ascharya anubhavati. Katham maya evam kritam iti. Right? So, whereas in the way in Yadavabhyudayam Vedanta Deshika addresses this is, see, he is a great Kavi. A great Kavi would feel, naturally they would probably feel ashamed to get into a venture where a lot of Mahakavis have done it before. But he says, I am bravely entering into this work of Yadavabhyudayam because I have the great reference material in hand, which means he has studied those things. Swayam tavati na pravartate. He takes the advice of others. Vasudha shrotraje tasmin vyasecha hridayasthite. Vasudha shrotrajaha valmikihi. Valmikihi hridaye asti. Vyasaha api hridaye asti. Anyepi kavayo babuvuhu nunam anapatrapaha. Trapam vina te kavyam kurvanti. Yataha tesham manasi vyasaha valmikihi cha staha. Iti karanat. See, there can be no greater poet other than Valmiki and Vyasa. Having them in mind, studying them completely and understanding what is a good poetry, if someone tries to venture, they will do it according to their Shakti. But at the same time, without compromising on good, the beauty of the poetry. Right? So, Bahoho, Kalat Baho, Kanyapi, Dushpadani, Labdhani Mandaha, Parito Vikirya, Chidrani Loshtair Atha, Pamsubhischa, Sampurayan, Vismayate Vilajjaha. The next one, this is also, he's continuing in the same fashion of how dull people who do not have that pratibha, that creativity, how do they work? Adya ekam kudhyaha, paredyuhu anyedyurekam cha padam nibadhya, shuktam, kvachit paryoshitam, kvachitcha koshnam, kvachit kvachitcha arachayanti padyam. Sorry. Kvachitcha arachayanti padyam. And when you start to write a poetry, if it is a fairly decent kavi also, at least within one day, one shlokam will be over, right? Or within a few hours, at least one shlokam will be over. They will try to think about that context, the meaning, try to put in the beautiful words, and then form the poetry. Because the moment you pause it halfway, the next day you will be unable to complete it because that flow of thought is gone. Because personal experience, I have many half-written shlokas from last year. It is just still there. I have not been able to finish it on that day, and that's it. It is gone. Today, when I look at it, that flow is gone. I'm unable to even complete those shlokas. But a newer shloka would come, which may be better than that, which may not be better than that. I don't know. But sometimes I may even come back to it later. Yet, the words, I might change the words. Yet one full shloka, that is what is a very mediocre kavi, right? But a great kavi would never do that. He would just sit, the flow would come, and he would start writing. And he would finish it within that particular session. Whereas kudhyaha kutsita dhihi esham murkhaha ityarthaha. Murkhaha tu adya ekam padam swikurvanti. Tadanantaram anyasmin dine paredyuhu ekam padam swikurvanti. Tadanantaram anyedyuhu ekam padam nibadhya ekaikam ekasminneva ahani sarvam. They don't take all of those words and put it together, and they are not unable to do it. Ekaikasmin dine ekaikam padam nibadhnanti. They take it and string it. After that, so how would the result be? Kvachit shuktam. Shuktam ityukte parusham, shushkam. It is without any rasam. Next day, or kvachit paryushitam. Sometimes it is kalatikrantam. You will find that this word doesn't flow with the next set of words. See, your experience, if you start off half verse in 1 year, and then after 2-3 years, if you do the next half of the verse, your experience is different, your expression of words is very different, so they won't even connect together. Ekantu tatra kalatikrantam bhavati. Right? Paryushitam is something that is gone bad, which was yesterday's or day before yesterday's. So puratanam bhavet. So there is no proper connection between that half and this half. Kvachit cha koshnam ityukte ishad ushnam kavoshnam athava koshnam iti padam tatra. So you can you want to say that it is lukewarm, it is just a little bit warm, it is not really hot words that will immediately pierce and make an effect with the reader. Tadrisha, or even if it is cold, it will still, see, Shitoshnam are two extremes which can have an effect on people. If it is lukewarm, nobody will bother about it. They will not even think about it. They will just stay in their comfort zone and understand it. Whereas if it is hot or cold, these extremes can immediately bring a person to attention, right? And their focus will be on those words. So Tadrisham, it is not that hot or cold, it is not an extreme of that. Kintu Ishadeva Ushnam Aprayojanam cha asti. When it is winter, you want hot water. When it is summer, you want cold water. If it is neither, then it is only lukewarm, and tatra aprayojanam jalam. Tavat padyam bhavati. Tavadeva padyam arachayanti. They create poetry which is sometimes shuktam, which is parusham, sometimes it is paryoshitam. It has already been expired. Koshnam is, it is lukewarm. It doesn't have the desired effect in the reader. Now, as soon as I say those three words, it's a simple shloka, but then these three words have different meaning. Shuktam, paryoshitam, koshnam cha anna vishaya api vaktum shakyate. Khalu anekartha padam tatra. Aprakritam tu anna vishayam. So someone who is a cook, so if he wants to create a dish, he won't be putting in one dish after the other every day. Ekasminneva ahani, in one day itself or in the morning itself, within an hour, he is going to cook and it is going to be consumed within 3 hours. Right? So he is not going to put one item today and then the next day another item, and then the third day another item, and fourth day he is going to serve it. Then it is going to, some vegetables will be dry, some parts will be that is, it is gone bad. Some parts are going to be lukewarm. Only if it is hot you would like to have that food. If it is not hot, you don't like to have it, right? So in the same way, it gives rise to the idea of a foolish cook. Mandaha pachakaha kaschana यथा अन्नम करोति एकैकस्मिन् दिने एकैकं पदार्थं तत्र स्थाल्यां स्थाप्य संस्थाप्य तदनन्तरं सः he tries to make अन्नम like that. So क्वचित् अन्नं शुष्कं भवति, पूतं प्रायः भवति, अथवा औष्ण्यरहितं भवति. So the prastutam here is only a kukavi, but it gives the idea of a kupachakaha. That is the aprastutam. Manda pachakasya vishayasya spurtihi bhavati iti karanat atra samasokti alankaraha. So samasokti is, the lakshanam for it is samasokti parispurtihi prastute aprastutasya cha. The prastuta vishayam here is, he is explaining the manner in which a dull kavi, a dull-witted poet tries to create a poetry, but it gives the picture of a manda pachakaha in our mind because of the visheshanas which have two meanings. So shuktam, paryushitam, koshnam iti trini visheshanani atra nanarthakani santi. Kavi vishaye, pada vishaye api vaktum shakyate, pachaka vishaye, anna vishaye api vaktum shakyate. Okay, so adyaikam ekam kudhiyaha paredyuhu anyedyurekam cha padam nibadhya shuktam kvachit paryushitam kvachit cha Koshnam kvachit charachayanti padyam. This is actually a Indra Vajra. I have not been saying the meter, but in the beginning I told you that it is either Upajati or Indra Vajra. He rarely uses Upendra Vajra in his shlokas. Okay. The next one is Apurya Vaktram Lashunair Vidhata Kim Nimba Saraihi Kudhyam Asinchat Nachet Katham Vachi Tatak Ksharantyam Saputi Gandhaha Sacha Tikta Bhavaha. Poor Neelakanta Dikshita. He must have experienced a lot of bad kavis in the Sabha of Tirumalayaka. That's why so many shlokas are coming out of his in different ways. He's an expert in this sarcastic way of kutti kamikkiradum, sarcastic way of showing his displeasure. Apurya Vaktram Lashunaihi Vidhata Kim Nimbasaraihi Kudhyam Asinchat. Kudhyam Vaktram Vidhata Brahma. Did Brahma, so first of all, he sees that these people don't have very sweet smelling words that come out of their mouth. Okay, bad poets, the speech that comes out of the mouth of bad poets is very foul smelling. So Puti Gandhaha, Tikta Bhavaha, Tiktam ityukte, it's bitterness. Okay, Katu. It has got a bitterness in its words also. So he is wondering how words that come out of Ksharantyam Vachi Tataha ityukte Kudhyam Mukhat Vaktrat Ksharantyam Vachi Katham saputi gandaha. How can such a foul smell come out of the mouth of come out of the speech that flows out of their mouth? And tikta bhavaha etadrisha katutvam api katham bhavet yadi vidhata lashunaihi apurya. Lashunam is garlic. If the creator has not filled the mouth of fools with garlic, and he has further sprinkled it, asinchat kena nimba saraihi asinchat nachet tarhi katham puti gandaha tikta bhavascha. If the creator has not filled the mouth of the fools with lashunaihi, with garlic, and then beyond that he has also sprinkled it with neem juice, nimba saraihi. Neem is very bitter, right? So apurya, lashunaihi apurya, nimba saraihi, nimba vrikshasya saraihi, athava nimba patranam saraihi, tatra sinchitam kim iti is worried, is wondering, did creator do this? That their speech, ksharantyam tataha kudhiyam vaktrat ksharantyam vachi katham saputi gandaha sachatikta bhavaha. Okay, if the creator had not done this, I was wondering about why he was doing this. So there seems to be a dhvani here, a vyatireka dhvani. See, this is an utpreksha alankara. Vidhata does not directly come and fill the mouth with the garlic and sprinkle neem juice here. So that itself is a sambhavana here. And it's an utpreksha alankara. From there, we understand the difference in the behavior of creator versus the behavior of Saraswati, his wife. Now, where is Saraswati katakshita purushaha ye santi tesham mukhat tu madhura vani nissarati. There is no bitterness or foul smelling thing, but it is filled with sweet fragrance. Ela sugandhi. If you see in Saundarya Lahari, Sharad Jyotsna Shuddham Shashiyuta Jatajuta Makutam Bharat Trasatrana Spatika Gutika Pustakagaram Sakranatva Natvam Kathamapi Satam Sannidadhate Madhu Kshira Draksha Madhurima Dhurinaha Panitayaha. Madhurima, the madhurata that is present in Madhu, Kshira and Draksha, among those, if you look at Phaniti is Bhaniti or Vakyani. Yesham kavinam Vakyani santi, te tu madhuranyeva santi. Kimartham sakriti natva. They just pray to Saraswati once. And the Saraswati is in the form of Sharad Jyotsna Shuddham. She's just as pure as the moonlight of autumn. Sharad Jyotsna Shuddham. Shashi Yuta Jatajuta Makutam. Her hair, on her Jatajutam, she has the moon. Both Parvati and Shiva have that crescent moon on their head. Varat Trasat Tranas Phatika Gutika Pustakakara. She has the Spatika Mala in her hand and a Pustakam. The other two hands are showing Varada and Varada Mudra and Abhay Mudra. Now, the Sakran Natvam Kathamapi Satam Sannidadate. People who just pray to you once, they are able to create bhaniti, which are the foremost among them in Madhurata. When you compare Madhu, Kshiram or Draksha, Madhu, honey, Kshiram, milk, and Draksha is raisins or grapes. These are all supposed to be the foremost in Madhurima, natural sweetness. Right? Sugar is at least you processed sweetness. These have a natural ikshu. You can also take ikshu, but these are all natural sweetness, and those words are much more sweeter than these things. So Saraswati katakshitanam purushanam mukhatetu evam madhura panitayaha agachanti, nirgachanti. Right? So that is the vyatirekam that he is probably indicating here through this shloka. Right? So that's what I was thinking. Otherwise, he wouldn't have. And Vedasaha srishte tu vilakshana eva vagdevatayaha daya ityapi tatra dhanyate khalu. So apurya vaktram lashunaihi vidata kim nimbasarehi kudhiyam asinchat vidhata brahma Did the creator, kudhiyam vaktram lashunaihi apurya, filling the mouth of fools with garlic, and nimbasaraihi asinchat kim. Did he also sprinkle it with neem juice? No chet. Otherwise, how could you have such a saputi gandha satikta bhavah cha katam bhavet tataha ksharantyam vachi. Tataha ityukte tasmat vaktrat. Okay. The next one, labheya nindam. Now he personalizes it. Why do you have so much of hatred towards this kukavi varta? Right? Someone may ask him that, ask the poet this, but then he says, the difference is, I would rather take an abuse from a great kavi than get a praise from these kukavi, dushkavi. I would appreciate great poetry, even if it is in the form of an abuse. I don't mind it. But there is a work called Mahisha Shatakam, which is a beautiful work. It's 100 verses. I think Chinna Dikshitharamba, I forget his name. I don't remember what the poet's name is, but that poet has written 100 shlokas on Mahisha, buffalo, but it is actually a ninda for the politicians. So he was so upset with the government rule that he wrote 100 shlokas praising the buffalo, but then he also, how he is able to live in this filth and all that. So it is actually an indication. It is like an anyapadesha. Anyapadesha is anyokti, indicative of politicians who are able to lead such a depraved life. So, labheya nindamapi satkavinam savyanga saurabhya rasair vachobhihi natu prashamsam dushkavinam natu prashamsamapi dushkavinam durgandhibihi vitarasaihi amibhihi. So I do not want to Vanchishwara Kavi. Thank you. Yes. So he is also called Chinna Dikshitar, if I remember. So labheya nindamapi satkavinam. Satkavinam nindamapi labheya. I don't mind getting a ninda. So this is his own expression here. Labheya. Aham labheya iti kavihi swayam bhakti tatra. Tari satkavinam nindamapi ninda kutsanam. If someone wants to scold me, it's okay. Whereas that scolding should come from a satkavi. Savyangya saurabhya rasaihi vachobhihi. If he is scolding me with words, vachobhihi, where that vak has rasam in it, rasaihi, which the rasam actually is flavored by vyangya. So vyangyena saurabhyaha katamatra okay. Savyangya ityukte vyangyasya saurabhyena saha vartamanaha rasaha. That's how you'll have to take the vyangyasya saurabhyam dhvanehe gandhaha yatra vartate the dhvanehe gandena saha vartate rasaha, which means the rasa should be known only through dhvani and it should not be expressed. So you can't have a shloka where the Nayaka looks at the Nayika and he expresses his Sringara rasam to her. Then we don't understand the Sringara. We don't feel the rasam there. There is no feeling there. It should be felt through Vyangya. So Vyangyasya saurabhyena eva yatra rasaha vartante tadrisha rasa yuktaihi vachobhihi vakyaihi nindamapi prapnuyam. It is okay if I get an abuse, but as long as those abusive words are suggestive of some rasa, then it is welcome. Parantu natu dushkavinam prashamsamapi na labheya. I don't want to get, even if it is a stotram from a dushkavi, but it has words which are foul, durgandhibihi, and essence free, vitarasaihi. Tatra rasameva nasti, nirasaihi padaihi, mamatu prashamsa na avashyaki. I do not want that. It is okay if they do ninda, Generally, these are all constructive criticism, we say, right? So if it is a Satkavi, it is coming from a Satkavi, then it is fine. Kuttupatalu modra kuda kaiyala kuttupadnom. It's very similar to that. And in Meghasandesham, Kalidasa says, Yancha mogha varam adhigune na adhame labdha kama. What is the first line of the shloka? One. Jatam vamshe bhuvana vidite pushkaravartakanam janamitvam prakriti kripanam kamarupam maghonah prakriti purusham kamarupam maghonah tenarthitvam tvayi vidhi vashat durabandurgatoham yancha mogha varam adhigune nadhame labdha kama. Adhigune, adhika guna gunavati purushe yadi yachnya mogha sati. If my wish, when I go and wish for something, I want something to be attained, and I go ask for a person who has a lot of good qualities, and even if he rejects, I'm fine. I will not go and ask a Nietzsche person who is willing to fulfill my desires. Tatra na adhame labdha kama api. I do not want to get my desires fulfilled from a low person, adhama purushe. This is because Yaksha is asking a Megha, and he is asking the cloud to take his sandesham to his beloved, right? But he addresses the Megha and says, Jatam Vamshe Bhuvana Vidite. I am not looking at you as an inanimate object. I'm looking at you, a person who is born in a great ancestry of Pushkara and Avartaka. Pushkara and Avartaka are types of clouds that come during Pralaya Kalam, and they are capable of creating Pralaya in this world. So, Tadrisha Megha Vamshe Jataha Tvam iti Karanat, and na kevalam tat Kamarupam Maghonaha. Maghonaha ityukte Indrasya Kama Rupam Prakriti Purusham Tvam. You are the first and foremost messenger of Indra. Indra is the god of rains, and so you are the first messenger, and you also are capable of taking whatever shape you want. So I am not asking a person who is a low life, but I'm asking a person with a lot of great qualities. Tatra mogha api yancha vritha jayate ityapi mastu. It's okay. I don't mind it, but as long as I don't have to go and beg a person who doesn't have qualities. That very similar to that here, he says, Nindamapi labheya. It's okay if I get an abuse from a great Kavi, as long as the words that he says are excellent and they have suggestion in them, and they're fragrant with suggestion. Natu dushkavinam prashamsam. That prashamsa, because it is vita rasam. It doesn't have any rasa, and he also doesn't call it as vak. He just says ami bihi durgandhi bihi, with these essence free foul things. That's all. Ami bihi ityeva vakti. Natu tatra ami vagbihi iti vakti. It is not even fit to be called as words. Tadrisha vakyaihi yadi saha prashamsamapi karoti tathapi na vanchami. Labheya nindamapi satkavinam savyangya saurabhya rasaihi vachobihi natu prashamsamapi dushkavinam durgandhibihi vitarasai ramibihi. The next one is vivakshitartha pratipadakam ye vinyasa bhedam naviduhu padanam dukkhavaho arthaha spuritopi tesham daurbhagya bhajamiva putra labhaha. Ye janaha vivakshita artha pratipadakam padanam vinyasa bedam na viduhu. See, many people have something or the other in their mind to say, but they are unable to find the words and place it in a proper manner and make the other person understand. It's only certain people who can bring about that understanding in another person. See, you can study, you can understand. That is just 1% or maybe 5% of your learning. You take notes, you understand, you write. Yes, all of that is possible. But to bring in that understanding capability in another person involves a lot more effort, because you need to know much more than what you have on hand. Vivakshita artha pratipadakam Vinyasa, padanam vinyasa bedam na viduhu. Ye janaha, those people who do not know the method of placing those words. Bhedaha atra prakaraha. Vinyasa prakaram ye na jananti. Padanam vinyasa prakaram ye na jananti. Kaschana vishishtaha arthaha asti manasi. Spuratyeva. Some word appears in their mind. But vivakshita artha pratipadakam vinyasa bhedam na jananti. They do not, the meaning that flashes to the people, they do not know how the method of placing those words that can reveal pratipadakam, that can reveal the vivakshita artha. The artham, the meaning that they want to express. Vivakshitam bhaktum ishtam artham tasya arthasya pratipadakam vinyasa bedam sthapana prakaraha na jananti, prakaram na jananti janaha. Tesham arthaha. Now what happens to the idea that is there in their mind? It is of no prayojanam, right? If you have an idea and if you are unable to express it in the proper manner, then it is shochaniya avasthameva prapnoti. It becomes a very pitiable, it takes on a pitiable state because it is useless. They are unable to express it properly, even though they are having those brilliant ideas. Some people would come up with, this is the idea that I want to express in a shloka. Can you make a shloka and give? See, if they should at least go and approach another kavi and be willing to share that idea to another kavi and make that kavi at least write a good poetry, and that artham comes out in the form of an expression. There are people who are like that, patrons. In those days, kings were patrons. They employed these poets who could write. A king might give the idea and he would make these people write. The king would give them money and then he would put it under his name also. There is in Kavya Prakasham, Mammata writes that there is a poet called Dhanika who wrote Natakas and Shri Harsha put it in his name. That is Ratnavali, Priyadarshika and Naganandam are works of Shri Harsha, and apparently Dhanika is a poet who wrote it in his name and he got a lot of money. He was a Daridra Kavi. What to do about it? No? So, Vivakshitartha Pratipadakam, Vinyasa Padanam Vinyasa Vedam, Ye na Jananti na Viduhu, Tesham Spuritaha api Arthaha. Even though there is a meaning that flashes in their mind, Arthaha Spuritaha Tesham Manasu, Parantu Sa Arthaha tu Dukkavaha Bhavati, Dukkam Avahati Prapayati. So, shokameva prapayati sa arthaha natu anandadayakaha, right? It's not of no use for them. So, tad yatha, here he gives an upama, an example of just as how a person who is unfortunate, in the sense he doesn't have much of money, daridraha kaschana, daurbhagyavashat, adrishtavashat, saha daridraha jataha, kintu tasya aduna saha putram prapnoti. He doesn't have even the means to feed his mouth and his wife's mouth. Now he has another mouth to feed. So, tatra, how can he, the news of a son being born is usually something that gives happiness to people. Whereas here, it gives, it is dukkavaha vishayaha varta, dukkavaha varta. Right? And he is not able to appreciate that news because it gives only grief. He has to earn more. He is already unable to earn as much as needed for himself. So, Vivakshitartha Pratipadakam ye Vinyasa Bedam na Viduhu Padanam. Though for those people who do not know the method of placing the words, Padanam Vinyasa Bedam ye na jananti. Yatha vivakshita arthasya artham pratipadayitum. So, pratipadayitum samarthaha vinyasa prakaraha. They do not know the method which will be capable of revealing their desired expression. Then that meaning which flashes in their mind, spuritopi arthaha dukkavaha eva bhavati tesham kathamiva daurbhagyabhajam putralabaha iva. Apatya praptihi daridrasya आनन्ददायिका न प्रत्युत कथं एतं पुत्रम् अहं धारयामि अथवा धारणपोषणार्थम् अहं तु असमर्थः इति दुःखी भवति सः ओके सो विवक्षितार्थ प्रतिपादकं ये विन्यासभेदं न विदुः पदानां दुःखावहो अर्थः स्फुरितोऽपि तेषां दौर्भाग्यभाजाम् इव पुत्रलाभः okay I will take up any questions if you have stopping the okay yeah it's a very savitri bhir vacham shashimani shilabhangaruchibhi this shloka also is it is after the verse that I said sharad jyotsna shuddham and vachobihi vagdevi vadana kamala amodaihi madhuraihi it's a karta kavyanam he is the person who becomes he only creates kavyams because his mouth is vasitam kamala vagdevyaha vadana kamala amoda maduraihi vagbihi saha kavyam karoti iti saundarya tatra I think it is the 17th shloka or so okay any other doubts if you have you can ask your questions okay then I think I'll stop today's class we will meet next week thank you namaste